Woe unto you that desire the day of Yahuwah. To what end is it for you? The day of Yahuwah is darkness and not light, as if a man did flee from a lion and a bear met him, or went into the house and leaned his hand on a wall and a serpent bit him. Shall not the day of Yahuwah be darkness and not light, even very dark and no brightness in it? Amos pictures the time preceding the day of Yahuwah as trap after trap. You escape a lion only to be met by a bear. You resort to the comfort and presumed safety of your house only to be bit by a serpent hiding in its wall. Yet a large portion of the world greatly anticipates the return of Yeshua with high hopes of wonderful things coming their way, because the vast majority don't realize where they are actually standing with the one true God currently. Thus, they don't recognize the part they are auditioning for in the show that is coming. The Abomination of Desolation being set up is a major turning point in Matthew 24. Yeshua frames it as the point of no return for the Jews of that generation. Whether the Abomination of Desolation was a physical image set up in the temple is debatable, although I'm inclined to believe it was. But what is certain is that the abomination was idolatry. In the Old Testament, if a person was an idolater, you would generally be able to see it, because they made physical images of what they worshiped. Laban was clearly an idolater because Rachel stole his household gods. And when he pursued Jacob, he called Yahuwah Jacob's God. Now surely he believed in Yahuwah also, especially after his experience the night before. But he did not know him, so he was not his God. When Moses ascended to receive the law and came down to Israel worshiping a golden calf, they were clearly in idolatry. Surely they believed in Yahuwah, as he had just spoken to them audibly weeks ago. But they chose to disobey the second commandment and make an image to worship. There is a very important distinction between what Laban and other nations did and what Israel did. When Aaron presented Israel with the golden calf, he said to them, "These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. Tomorrow is a feast to Yahuwah." While Laban was worshiping his own gods as his own gods, Israel had assigned Yahuwah's name to a golden calf that they had made and was worshiping it as Yahuwah, effectively profaning his name. Today, physical images are mostly obsolete, so idolatry is much more subtle than the days of old. So subtle that many who are in idolatry don't realize it. Some of them think washing your car on Sunday is making your car an idol. Others think that pursuing wealth is an idol. And some even say that Job had made his children an idol because he constantly made sacrifices for them, which is false, by the way. Among people who claim to believe in God, all of these self-made standards are symptoms of a greater underlying problem: their erroneous beliefs about God. In Ezekiel 20, Israel comes to Ezekiel to inquire of Yahuwah, and he says he will not be inquired of by them and asks Ezekiel to judge them. He then recounts the unfaithfulness of their forefathers in the wilderness and tells us why he didn't bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all nations. He says, "Because they despised my judgments and walked not in my statutes, but polluted my Sabbaths, for their heart went after their idols." So here, God is equating despising his judgments, not walking in his statutes, and polluting his Sabbaths with idolatry. In fact, he is giving idolatry as the very reason that these things were done. He continues in verse 24, "Because they had not executed my judgments, but had despised my statutes, and had polluted my Sabbaths, and their eyes went after their fathers' idols, wherefore I gave them also statutes that were not good, and judgments whereby they should not live." So because Israel refused to be obedient, he gave them over to their own desires, and let them do that which he commanded them not, neither came it into his mind, that they might keep pouring their filth into his cup of wrath until it was full, at which point he would take them in their own pollution, kick them out of his land, and send them back into the slavery he had delivered them from, and that they had so desperately wanted to return to. Then he does the same thing to their sons by telling them, "Go ye, every one of you, and serve your idols, and afterwards also, if you will not obey. But you will not continue to pollute my name with your gifts and idolatry. As it stands, those who have idols set up in their hearts but still claim Yahuah as their God cannot pollute his name through their gifts, because he destroyed the temple to prevent it. But the pollution of it through the blasphemous picture that has been painted of him with false doctrines and the keeping of traditions persists. In Joshua 24, Joshua told Israel to put away the gods their fathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt, and to fear Yahuah and to serve in perfection and in truth. So more than 40 years post-Exodus, after the first generation had fallen in the wilderness and the second had taken the land, when the fall of Jericho and the destruction of Achan for his sin should have been fresh on their minds, they were still cleaving to the gods of Egypt rather than choosing the God who answered their cry to be brought out of there. Nevertheless, their response to Joshua was, God forbid that we should forsake Yahuah to serve other gods. They couldn't see that they had already forsaken Yahuah because they had the idols among them. Yahuah is a jealous God. He says his name is jealous, which means he is not going to accept mixed worship. Deuteronomy 12 says that you have to worship God precisely how he said to worship him. The most rudimentary element of that worship is obeying his commandments. This is the baseline. It only took Israel breaking one commandment to find themselves in full-fledged idolatry. Because when you discount, add to, or alter what God said, it is no longer him that you are worshiping. It is your own personal, invisible golden calf that you have assigned his name to. This commandment against false worship is directly followed by a warning against any person who tries to lure you away from the true worship of God, as mandated in his law as a false prophet. That means no matter how they spend their disposal of Torah, or what signs and wonders they manifest as proof God sanctioned their message, you are not to follow them if they are seducing you out of Torah. It even tells you why it will happen. Therefore, you should expect it to happen. If you do not have Torah, you do not have God, no matter how convinced you are otherwise. Yeshua told the leaders of the Jews that they did not know God and that they only claimed that he was their God. This would mean that they were in idolatry at that time, despite appearances to the contrary. It just hadn't come to a head because God's cup was not yet full, so they still had time to repent. Today, Christianity and Islam account for more than half of the world's surveyed population, while Judaism is among the smallest with less than 1%. And since they all at least appear to share the belief that there is one God, and all claim their God to be the God of Abraham at minimum, we automatically assume that they are all talking about the same God. But in reality, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam do not worship the same God. They each worship a different God, which means that at least two are in idolatry. But that's not the half of it. Within each of these religions, there are different sects that believe different things about their God. So even if they all call him the same name, each sect actually worships a variant of the God of their religion. And within the sects, there are disagreements also. So you can see where this is headed. This is why Yeshua emphasized unity. He prayed for his 12 apostles to be one and for their disciples to be one, because disagreements about who God is and what he requires is the doorway to the abomination that causes desolation. In our time, idolatry is not as much about our eyes as it is about our ears. You can't just look for the golden calf. You have to listen for it. God's judgment is already underway for this generation, but right now we are in the eye of the storm. What comes next determines what we are made of, and we will either be purged or purified. So it is imperative that we know what Yahuah said so that we will not be washed away in the days to come. That means it's time to start relying less on our eyes and more on our ears so that we can see through the lies and hear the truth. He that hath an ear, let him hear.